And we're live. Welcome to MMA Capital number 3. I'm going to be your host, Ben. For those of you this is the first time watching, I'm going to be breaking down UFC fights and giving my analysis for the upcoming fights next week. This is my third video, so I'm going to be breaking down UFC Fight Night, Gastelum versus Whittaker, that took place last night. And then I'm going to be breaking down UFC 261, which is this Saturday coming up now. We're going to have 3 title fights, so next week's card should be super stacked. The women's strawweight, women's flyweight, and UFC welterweight, men's welterweight title are all going to be up for grabs. So next week's UFC 261 might be the most stacked card of the year in terms of title implications. My first week, I hit on 4 of 5 of my predictions. That was from my first video to my second video. This week, I wasn't quite as lucky. I hit on 2 of 4 of my picks for only 50%. Unfortunately, two of the fights on the main card were scrapped. I believe one, it was Ricardo Ramos versus Bill Algeo was scrapped because of COVID reasons. And then, the fight that I was maybe the most excited for in terms of entertainment value was scrapped that day while the card had already started. That fight was Jeremy Stephens versus Drakkar Klose got scrapped while the card was going, while it was on the prelims. Not sure what happened. They said there was maybe an injury or something. They didn't give any details, so that was kind of shocking. So unfortunately, we lost 2 good fights on the main card, 2 fights that I think I would have predicted correctly if they happened. And yeah, let me get right into it. I'm going to start from the bottom up. So the first fight on the main card was between Luis Pena and Alex Munoz. Just for reference too, I'm only going to be covering the fights on the main card for the sake of time. I'm not going to be covering anything on the prelims unless it's something that really catches my eye, like maybe the main event of the prelims, just for the sake of time. I only really have, 2 to 4 hours to watch the fights on the main card. I don't have, unfortunately 5 or 6 hours to watch everything on the prelims, especially when there's, 8 to 10 fights on the prelims and then 6 on the main card. It's a 5 or 6 hour watch, which I don't have time for. Even last night, the main card was 5 or 6 fights, started at 10 p.m. and didn't wrap up till around 1:30 a.m. So these fights go pretty late some days. So I hope you'll understand about that. But let me get right into last night's card from top to bottom. So first we had Luis Pena versus Alex Munoz. I was looking forward to this fight a lot. I thought it was going to be pretty exciting, and it definitely was, and it delivered. Luis Pena is now at AT American Top Team, ATT, and Alex Munoz is fighting out of Uriah Faber's Team Alpha Male, and he's actually the wrestling coach there, which I'm sure is says a lot about his credentials. Alex Munoz, I think, was a high-end D1 wrestler. I believe he was a D1 All-American, so he has high-level wrestling credentials, and if you're the wrestling head coach at a top flight MMA camp like Team Alpha Male in California, then that speaks to your wrestling chops and your grappling credentials. This is kind of an interesting stylistic matchup. I think Luis Pena is one of the tallest fighters at 155 men's lightweight. I think he's 6'3", which is pretty damn tall for lightweight, considering his opponent in this fight, Alex Munoz, is only 5'9". So it's your typical stylistic matchup of tall, rangy striker versus a kind of short, stocky wrestler who's gonna throw some big punches and try to get the takedown. I thought this fight more than lived up to the hype. These are 2 of the blue chip prospects at 155, 2 guys who are probably going to be in the top 15, within the next calendar year or 2. They're both at legit MMA training camps, and it showed. They both looked like they were in good shape. They both came in motivated, and they were cracking from start to finish. Both guys were throwing big shots. Munoz, the former college wrestler, was trying to take Pena down. Pena, the tall, rangy striker, had pretty good takedown defense and get-ups. He really wasn't getting ragdolled and getting taken down and not having the ability to get up, which is important if you're a tall, rangy striker, right? Guys are going to try to get a hold of your legs and drag you down. And that didn't happen. This fight was actually probably my favorite on the card in terms of entertainment value. I thought it should have been fight of the night. Both guys were swinging throughout. There was good offensive and defensive grappling on both sides. And, man, this is a good fight. This is probably one of my favorite fights in a few months. Both guys came in motivated. They both came in hungry. They both showed that they're dogs and that, they're both durable and they can put on a show, man. These guys were landing hard. They were chopping up each other's legs. They were cracking each other in the head. These guys went toe-to-toe for 3 hard rounds. And Pena, my guy, I predicted, got the close split decision victory. I mean, this fight could have gone either way. And like I said of last week's match of Arnold Allen and Sadiq Youssef, this is one of those fights where I think both guys won because they're still prospects, still developing. But, they both showed that they can put on a show. They got talent. They have, good coaching at American Top Team and Team Alpha Male, respectively. I'm high on these guys going forward. I think Alex Munoz has dropped 2 split decisions in a row or 2 decisions in a row, which is tough. But, if you're a former D1 All-American, you're adjusting to MMA, right? You're adjusting to the striking game. You're adjusting to distance management. It's not pure grappling like D1 wrestling matches, right? You're getting punched and elbowed in the face. You're getting kneed in the head. This guy Munoz took a few clean flush knees to the head trying to go for single and double leg takedowns. So both of these guys show they got a chin, and both 2 guys to keep an eye on at lightweight. I thought it should have gotten fight of the night. It didn't, but at least I predicted the victor right. I predicted Luis Pena was going to get his hand raised. I predicted knockout or sub. It was a decision, but man, good fight, entertaining. Probably my favorite fight on the card. Next, we had a women's flyweight fight. This women's flyweight matchup was supposed to be on the prelims, but since 2 fights got knocked off, they moved it up. Like I said, Ramos versus Algeo was off a few days ahead of time from COVID, but the co-main of Jeremy Stevens and Drakkar Klose got scrapped, an hour or 2 before the fight was supposed to happen. So I'm not sure what happened there. They said Drakkar Klose had an injury. I would have liked to have known what happened. So this women's flyweight, I didn't predict and give my breakdown last week because I didn't know it was going to be on the main card. It was okay. I didn't know either of these fighters. It was between Tracy Cortez versus Justine Kish. I hadn't heard of either of these fighters, unfortunately. It was okay. This girl, Tracy Cortez, has some legit wrestling credentials, so she went in there to kind of grapple. The girl she was fighting, Justine Kish, has been a pro fighter since 2010, so respect. I think she's like a black belt in Taekwondo or karate. It was pretty much a matchup of striker versus grappler. Unfortunately, those matchups can kind of turn into one fighter laying on the other one for 3 to 4 minutes of each 5-minute round, which is kind of how it went down. This girl, Justine Kish, had Tracy Cortez hurt a few times on the feet, but when Cortez was hurt, she was able to get the takedowns and kind of just lay on her. Not taking anything away from, fighters who do that, but, for 15 minutes, when a lot of it is one fighter has a grappling advantage and they're kind of laying on the other fighter and staying just busy enough to not get stood up, it can kind of be a little boring. So that's my breakdown of that fight. Like I said, I didn't break it down because this fight was supposed to be on the prelims. It got bumped up because had a few fights on the main card get scrapped. This next matchup And the card was men's middleweight. It was between Abdul Razak Al Hassan versus Jacob Malkoun. I didn't get this prediction right. I had Abdul Razak Al Hassan, who typically fights at welterweight. He was probably literally the biggest welterweight in the UFC. I think he missed weight twice in his last 2 fights trying to make welterweight. So he's bumped up to middleweight, which is 170 to 185. I think this guy, Al Hassan, should really be fighting at 205 because he's still probably the biggest middleweight. I think he's probably cutting too much weight, and it's affecting his cardio. I had Al Hassan winning this fight. He's got all 10 of his pro wins are first-round knockout, 6 of which are in the first minute. So I thought he would go in there and get the early knockout, which he didn't. Jacob Malkoun is really the main training partner of Robert Whittaker, who was in the main fight of the evening. And this guy Malkoun is a small sample size. I was kind of I was a little skeptical of him coming in because I think he was only 3-1 or 4-1, and he was already in the UFC. You rarely see that unless someone is coming from they're a master in one discipline previously and they're crossing over to MMA, right? Like they're a former D1 All-American or former world champion boxer or something. Rarely do you see a guy who's only 3-1 in MMA fighting in the UFC. And Malkoun actually got knocked out in his debut in under 20 seconds and got starched. I mean, he got knocked out in one punch. So I thought it was going to be a tough matchup for him against the real bruiser in Al Hassan, who pretty much sprints out there and says, hey, I'm going to try to get the knockout in the first minute or two, and if I don't get it, it is what it is. So I thought it was going to be a power puncher versus a guy with a weak chin. It didn't turn out that way. This guy Malkoun, who's Robert Whittaker's main training partner, wrestled the hell out of Al Hassan. Really showed great cardio and grappling. I know Malkoun and Whittaker, who both fight out of Australia, said they're flying in wrestlers from all around the world to help them with this camp. They're both on the same card, and it showed, man. They showed great wrestling, ton of grit, ton of cardio. Malkoun was ragdolling Al Hassan, just constantly taking him down. He got, I believe, 8 takedowns, which I'm not sure if that was a middleweight record. It's got to be up there. Man, 8 takedowns in a middleweight fight is a lot because a lot of these guys are, air quotes, fighting at 185, but they're cutting and putting weight back on. I mean, some of these guys at middleweight, the night of the fight, probably really weigh, 210 to 220 pounds. So to go out there and be able to get 8 takedowns and just manhandle a guy on the ground for 15 minutes says a lot. It says a lot about their training and the fact that they're flying all these guys in to work on their wrestling in Australia because, man, really having great offensive wrestling is a great way to not only win fights but kind of minimize damage. I mean, this guy Malkoun took, I would say, almost no damage, close to taking no damage to any part of his body, so he might be able to have a quick turnaround, man. Definitely a good thing to have, especially when you're fighting kind of out the gates guy who's the most dangerous in the first minute or two of a fight. If you can take him down, make him grapple, get his arms tired, get his arms pumping with blood, then you're pretty much guaranteed to win that fight if that's your game plan and you can execute. So respect to Malkoun. I think it was smart of him, too. He hit his chin really well. He had really good striking defense. You definitely don't want to be a guy who's debuting in the UFC and you get starched, knocked out cold from one punch, right? That's why I was so skeptical on this guy, because I remember seeing him fighting a few months back, and I'm like, wow, this guy has great boxing, great wrestling, and then he gets knocked out in 18 seconds, and it's like, it's not what you want to see from allegedly a blue chip prospect. But he came out, made the proper adjustments, and wrestled the hell out of a real big guy. Like I said, I mean, Al Hassan at middleweight, he made weight, and when he rehydrates and refuels, he's probably 220 in there. So to come in there and just manhandle a guy who's a real specimen for 15 minutes is really impressive. And definitely have my eyes on Malkoun. If he can wrestle like that, man, he'll be in the top 5 in middleweight in a year or two, because he showcased high level wrestling, hitting all kinds of things, body locks, single legs, double legs. I mean, he had it all. Great top control. Went for a bunch of subs, couldn't really hit him, but that's fine. Sometimes it's position over submission. And this is a wrestling heavy fight that I didn't mind watching, because he wasn't just laying on him. He was trying to do damage. He was trying to hit subs. He wasn't just laying on a guy for 15 minutes. He was showing good offensive grappling. He had good control. He was trying to do damage, and hell of an impressive performance. The commentators last night, like Michael Bisping and Dominic Cruz, were really impressed that he could go out there and wrestle for that long, man, because anyone who's done some grappling like jiu-jitsu or wrestling, man, gets your heart rate up real quick. So to go out there for 15 minutes and really manhandle a guy, super impressed. So I got that prediction wrong. But shit, from my point of view, we had a real power puncher versus a guy who looked like he had no chin in his first UFC fight. So respect to Malkoun for making the adjustments. I mean, we'll see next time if he's in a fight, if he can't just ragdoll a guy for 15 minutes, what his chin looks like. Because like I said, man, middleweight, these guys are weighing in at 185, and when they rehydrate and get some food in them, some of these guys are in there 210, 215, if not more fight nights. So see what his chin looks like. But man, great wrestling. And if him and Whittaker keep flying in these wrestlers from all over, they're gonna be a problem, man, because they both wrestled real well in their fights. Next up on the main card, we had Andre Arlovsky versus Chase Sherman, heavyweight fight. I had Sherman in this fight. I think Chase Sherman, this is his second stint in the UFC. He's training out of Elevation Fitness in Denver. I believe that's Trevor Whitman's team, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's like Justin Gaethje. I think Kamaru Usman is training there. Alistair Overeem is there. I think Rose Namajunas, who's fighting for the strawweight belt next week, is that. So, this guy Sherman is at one of the top small MMA training camps that has, a lot of top level, champion level or near champion level fighters. So, let me pull this up. Yeah, okay, so this is Elevation Fight Team. I'm just taking a look at a few of their fighters. It's Alistair Overeem, Gaethje, Neil Magny, Drew Dober, Corey Sandhagen, Curtis Blades. I mean, shit, the list just goes on and on. So I don't want to get too buried in the weeds here. I just want to make sure this is Trevor Whitman's spot, not. There's two big MMA training camps. Just want to make sure I got the right information here. So Trevor Whitman, he had his own gym. Grudge MMA closed it down, but I'm like 99% sure he's training a lot of these guys who fight at Elevation, like Rose Namajunas, Justin Gaethje, and now Usman. And I think he trains them at Elevation Fitness. Sorry about that. I just want to make sure, I have the right training camp. So I don't think Whitman is the head coach of that gym, but he trains a few select fighters out of Elevation. I'm 99% sure. So I had Sherman over Arlovsky in this fight. Sherman's training with Some of the top three fighters in multiple weight classes. Unfortunately, Sherman didn't get it done. Andre Arlovsky, the vet, former heavyweight champion, he's 42 years old. Got the win, got his hand raised. It was a close fight. I think it was a unanimous decision for Arlovsky. I thought it could have even been a split decision or gone Sherman's way, but it was a close fight. It was a tough fight for sure. Guys had similar styles at heavyweight. They're both kind of stand-up straight boxers, stand and bang. Kind of mixed some kicks in, but really beat the hell out of each other. It was an entertaining fight. I thought Sherman, the young gun, guy training with some real top fighters, was good to get his hand raised. Unfortunately, he didn't. Lost to the vet Arlovsky. All respect to him. I mean, he's 42 years old. He's still out there beating up-and-coming young guys. Usually it's supposed to be the other way around, where the young guys beating up on the old vet, former champ. But shit, man, Andre Arlovsky is 42 years old. He looks great. His cardio's great. He looks sharp. He looks fast. And, man, he might pull a Dan Henderson to be fighting in the UFC until he's 45 or 46. One reason I had Sherman winning is Arlovsky's chin isn't what it used to be, especially at heavyweight. But, man, he's still got a chin. He looked good. He took some big shots, ate it well. A few other legendary heavyweights like Alistair Overeem and Junior Dos Santos got cut recently from the heavyweight division because they were old guys fighting young guys and they were getting knocked out. But Arlovsky still got it, man. The big thing for heavyweight, if you're older, is still having a chin. And he still got it, so respect to him. Didn't get that fight right either, but it's all good. That was actually the co-main, the heavyweight fight. It was supposed to be Stevens versus Drakkar close, but that got scrapped. While the fight card was going on, I would have liked to have known what happened there, especially since I like Jeremy Stevens a lot, and I predicted him to win. So, unfortunately, that got scrapped. Hope they can reschedule that, because that looked like it was going to be a banger between Jeremy Stevens and Drakkar Close. Next up, we had the main event. Robert Whittaker, former middleweight champion, and Kelvin Gastelum, who once fought for the interim middleweight belt against Israel Adesanya. Both of these guys lost to the current champ, Israel Adesanya. So this fight between Whittaker and Gastelum was like, a number one contender or one of the number one contender fights. It ended up being the first, the real number one contender fight. I predicted this one correctly. Robert Whittaker got the job done. I successfully predicted it was going to be a decision, a close decision, a UD. I thought going in it could have turned into a split decision if it was close. But Robert Whittaker, one of my fighters, got it done, man. He looked really sharp. I said in my last video that I think Whittaker is probably the best not champion fighter in the UFC. I would say him or Dustin Poirier at lightweight. They're both ranked number one at lightweight and middleweight, respectively. And shit, man, probably the two best non-champ fighters in the UFC. I think Whittaker might actually be even better than Poirier. Whittaker's actually been more active than Adesanya in the middleweight division. Whittaker's clearing out a lot of the other top contenders like Darren Till and Jared Cannonier and now Kelvin Gastelum. So the title shot's gotta be his, man. He looked sharp in every area. I said in last week's video, Gastelum's a great fighter as well, a guy who's got real good hands and good wrestling, but Whittaker's the complete package in terms of striking. He's got boxing, he's got kickboxing, knees, elbows, super diverse set of weapons with his kicks. He's got a lethal high kick that he sets up. Hit clean on Gastelum, 5 or 6 heavy head kicks that would have probably knocked out anyone else in the division. After seeing this fight last night and these guys go at it, I'd say Kelvin Gastelum might have the best chin in the UFC. He doesn't even have to move his head a lot or use traditional striking defense because his chin is so damn good. He was just eating shot after shot after shot. And Gastelum kept coming forward and throwing big shots, trying to win the fight. I mean, it was a unanimous decision, but it was entertaining. I my prediction was right, where Whittaker was just on another level compared to any of these guys. I think in addition to probably being the best non-champ in the UFC, he might have the most underrated skill set in the entire UFC. His striking is high level. He mixes it up really well. He has great footwork and defense. He was getting in and out, moving his head, not taking shots. He didn't take a ton of damage in this fight. And, man, the title fight's his. You have to run it back between Adesanya and Whittaker. In their first matchup, Adesanya made pretty short work of Bobby Knuckles, but Whittaker kind of just rushed in on him, kind of blitzed him, and it didn't work. He got caught and knocked out. I think people know now, Paulo Costa tried the same thing where you can't just rush Adesanya. As good as Whittaker's striking is, Adesanya's is that next level, that zenith of MMA striking, where there's no one with higher striking IQ and technical striking than Adesanya. I mean, Adesanya will literally stand still or move backwards and make you come to him, make you rush in and catch you with something. He caught Whittaker with a check hook. And Adesanya is so damn accurate, he doesn't need to loop and throw these wild punches. He can just touch you and touch you and touch you until he gets the finish. So I think Whittaker's learned from his mistakes. He's moving a lot better now. He was implementing, I think his first martial art, Whittaker, was karate. He was using a very karate style stance with his hands down and his legs really far, iconic stance. Not really using a traditional boxing or MMA stance. And man, he was doing everything. He was switching stance. He was throwing front kicks, leg kicks, oblique leg kicks, everything. Just perfect striking and probably his best performance in the UFC. And that's saying something because this is a guy in Robert Whittaker who only has one loss at the weight class to the former champion. And I think he's evolved. I mean, granted, his last 3 fights were very technical, very risk adverse. He's not just going in there to brawl. He's going in there with a game plan and trying not to take damage, which I think is smart. Gastelum's a little bit of a different story. I'm high on Gastelum physically. I mean, like I said, I think he has the best chin in the UFC and one of the best chins in MMA in general. But, shit, man, for a guy, I said in my last video, he was a former, I think, like junior college All-American or junior college All-American wrestler. Gastelum just kind of going in there to brawl and swing, and I think he's now like 1-4 in his last fights. He had one of the best fights of all time against Israel Adesanya. Had Adesanya hurt on multiple occasions, but man, you're fighting in a talent-rich men's middleweight division. You can't be going in there just trying to fucking swing and knock people out. I know, yeah, you could knock somebody out, catch them cold in the first minute or two, but that's not a game plan. When you look at guys from Whittaker's camp in Australia or like American Top Team, some of the guys fighting for Trevor Whitman like Kamaru Usman, they have a clear game plan for rounds 1 through 3 or 1 through 5 as the main event, and it's like, hey, this isn't working, let's pivot. Like, you're getting pieced up on the feet, you're getting beat up, let's wrestle, let's grapple. Gastelum has shown in his last few fights, he's just kind of going in there to brawl. He's just trying to go in there and swing, which I respect, but man, you need a game plan. Like I said, I was talking about Trevor Whitman's guys and some of the people fighting out of elevation, Curtis Blades, Kamaru Usman, Justin Gaethje. They're going in there with game plans, and if things aren't going well in the first 2 rounds of the fight, they pivot, especially if you're in there for 5 rounds, because Gastelum was kind of just running around throwing big shots, took a lot of damage, tried to wrestle a little bit, but shit, man, I think he was a state champ in high school wrestling. Use your wrestling, man, or at least try to use your wrestling, because same thing has happened to Conor McGregor. If your game plan going in is just to knock somebody out in the first 30 seconds, that's not a game plan, right? So for Gastelum, he's fighting out of King's MMA under Rafael Cordero. Switch camps, man. Go to one of the bigger MMA camps like ATT or American Kickboxing in California, because there's a reason some gyms are having a lot of success at the high levels. It's having a game plan, breaking things down at an analytical level, because, man, you're fighting the number one contender in the middleweight division for a number one contenders fight, and it looked like you didn't have a game plan. It looked like you were just going in there, throwing looping shots, hoping to knock them out, which, again, that's not a game plan, right? So, yeah, Whittaker, the title shot is his. I really think Whittaker can beat Adesanya now. Granted, he has kind of a risk-adverse style. He's not going there to just brawl, but he looked super technical last night. He got in and out, didn't really take that much damage, and, had a clear game plan coming in. Gastelum, who has some wrestling credentials, he was able to take him down a few times and control him on the ground. And Whittaker and this guy Malkoun flying in these wrestlers to, I think it's like Gracie something Grange in Australia. They look good, man. Whittaker's got some skills on the ground, and I think Whittaker is such a balanced fighter that if he knows he's not going to be able to take a guy down, he's not going to use the takedowns. If he thinks he can get a takedown or two here to mix things up and make it an MMA fight, he will. And Adesanya in his last fight against Jan Blachowicz showed that he had a pretty bad bottom game. It looks like if you can get him down, depending on the position, he's not going to be able to get up, or not going to be able to get up in an efficient way where you're going to make him tired and kind of burn the energy. Because like I was saying with Malkoun versus Hassan, man, if you've done like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and you're on the bottom and you're getting smashed, you have both shoulders on the mat, your gas tank empties immediately, right? And the same thing is true in a pro fight. If you're holding a guy down, both of his shoulders are pressed against the mat, it's chest on chest. The guy on the bottom's gas tank is going to empty immediately. It doesn't matter if you're a marathon runner or something. If you're on a mat and a grown man's laying on you, your gas tank's going to empty. So, yeah, that's my take on Whittaker Gastelum. The title shot is Whittaker's, and when that title fight comes up with Adesanya and Whittaker, I'm probably going to pick Whittaker in that fight. Adesanya is the better striker, the better kickboxer, but this isn't glory kickboxing. This is MMA. And Adesanya, I saw some flaws in his bottom game, some bad defensive habits or bad defensive wrestling where he can probably get up eventually, man, but you can burn him, make him burn some energy, get those limbs tired so he's not quite as sharp on the feet. I think that's one reason Adesanya is kind of ducking Whittaker. He's saying he doesn't want to fight him again because, man, the number one contender is clearing out the other contenders in the division. Adesanya's fought twice to defend his belt. A stinker against Romero and one good fight against Costa, but fought a guy in Paulo Costa who, like Whittaker the first time, his game plan was just to rush him, and I think people realize now the path to victory against Adesanya isn't just running in and swinging wildly, right? He's going to catch you with something. The game plan is probably to make it an MMA fight, sprinkle in some takedowns, just make him tired, make those arms and legs tired and try to get the victory. So, yeah, my accuracy was a little off on some of these fights, but granted, 2 of 6 of the fights I predicted got scrapped, and I think I would have predicted those correctly. I'm not sure why, of all the prelim fights, they moved up Cortez and Kish. Because I don't want to say Cortez versus Kish, the women's flyweight fight, was a stinker or anything, but I didn't know either of those fighters, especially since there was a guy like Gerald Meeschart, who's the third fight on the prelim. I'm not sure why they didn't move a guy up like Gerald Meeschart, who at least I know, but that's besides the point. So I went 2 of 4 on the fights that actually happened, and hopefully we'll predict next week's a little bit better, because week 1 my predictions were 4 of 5 for 80%, so that was pretty good. So let me jump on to UFC 261 and give the breakdown for this card. We got 3 title fights. Excuse me. So yeah, I'm gonna, for the first time, going to bring in some odds, some official odds going in to see if my thoughts and predictions are in line with, like, the bettors are saying and the experts. These three title fights I think are going to be pretty close. The main with Usman versus Masvidal, I think Usman's like a minus 400 favorite. That one's clear, but the two women title fights I think are going to be damn close. Like, it could really go either way. Normally, if it's a title fight and I really know both fighters, normally if you listen to this title fight, I would feel pretty clear one way or the other. Since I started watching MMA last March when we started with COVID, I've hit on almost all the title fights, including like Jan Blachowicz versus Israel Adesanya, which was kind of an upset. Blachowicz, the same guy, versus Dom Reyes when I think he was the underdog. So I've hit on some title fights where the experts, weren't predicting. But these two women title fights between Weili Zhang and Rose Namajunas and Shevchenko versus Andrash, I mean, they can be pretty close, I think, especially that Zhang and Rose fight. So let me go ahead and pull up some of the official odds going in, because now this fight card is 6 days off, so these odds are probably going to stick. So first in the card, we have Anthony Smith versus Jimmy Crute. Anthony Smith, former title contender, fought John Jones unsuccessfully and lost for the light heavyweight strap. Anthony Smith, ton of MMA fighting experience. He's 34-16. Well-rounded skill set, real tough, got good boxing, has some jiu-jitsu. I think he hit a triangle off his back in his last fight to get a win. He's fighting Jimmy Crute, who's 12-1 in MMA. Pretty hyped up guy, I think. The UFC loves these guys who are like 11-0 or 12-1, right, with only that one loss in their record. I've seen Crute fight, and I think he's a good prospect, but I'm going to take Smith in this fight. I think Smith has more tools in his toolbox, and Smith is an older guy, and I think he would like a title shot. I think he wants some respect on his name, that he's not a stepping stone for some of these young guys. I think he wants to maybe fight for the title again at 205. So I like Smith in this fight. I think he's got more tools in his toolbox. I think he's probably going to have a little bit more fight IQ than young guys. Sometimes you'll see some of these young guys versus a vet. They think they can overpower him or just knock him out clean early, which I don't think is going to be the case. I like Anthony Smith in this fight. And take a look at the odds. So Anthony Smith is plus 160 underdog, and Jimmy Crute is minus 200. So that's kind of close. Like I said, some of these fights in this card are going to be damn close. So yeah, I like Smith versus Crute. Maybe by decision. I think Smith's just going to have that veteran savvy and fight IQ like we saw Andre Arlovsky have this week, where more tools in the toolbox and know what he would have to do in a close 3-round decision. Maybe landing more shots, maybe sprinkling in some takedowns, so we'll see. So I like Smith over Crute in that fight. Next up, we have at middleweight, Uriah Hall, who's 17-9 in MMA, and Chris Weidman, 15-5 in MMA. Chris Weidman, former middleweight champ, beat Prime Anderson Silva. I think it was regarded as one of the biggest upsets in MMA history. I think Anderson Silva, for those who don't know, is one of the best fighters of all time. Probably, when he was in his prime, the GOAT or one of the GOATs. And Weidman knocked him out cold in their first meetup. I think Silva was like a plus 1,000 favorite or something crazy. And then Weidman beat Anderson Silva again. So Weidman's at the end of his career, former D1 All-American, super great MMA wrestling, black belt in jiu-jitsu. I think he trains at Serra-Longo on Long Island, actually, Nassau County, where I'm from, Nassau County, New York. But shit, man, Weidman's old. Him and the guy he lost the middleweight strap to Luke Rockhold had a similar career trajectory after Weidman and Luke Rockhold had a real banger in their title fight. Both took a lot of damage and weren't quite the same afterwards. Both Rockhold and Weidman, after their title fight, got knocked out quite a bit. I saw Weidman even more than Rockhold. I think Weidman's been knocked out bad in like 4 of his last 5 fights, so his chin is kind of gone. He's still got the wrestling and grappling advantage over Uriah Hall. Uriah Hall, more of a flashy kind of kickboxer, but I'm going to take Weidman to win this fight. But shit, man, he's gotta hide his chin. He's got to have good striking defense and not go in there to brawl. Because I'd say Weidman for the division has one of the worst chins. It's no disrespect to him or his skills, but when you're a former champ and you've had a lot of fights, your chin can kind of fade. So I like Weidman in this fight. He's gonna have the wrestling advantage, but man, he's got to tuck his chin, be smart, and use his wrestling. Uriah Hall, a guy who came up on the Ultimate Fighter, a guy who people had high hopes for because of his physical traits and striking is really flashy. Beautiful striking, but Hall's kind of had an up and down career. Not a guy who has really been able to string anything together. He's had a few good wins here and there, and then he's had some losing streaks. Not a guy who's going to really use any offensive grappling. This fight is classic wrestler versus, kickboxer, so it's going to come down to whose game plan works. Can Weidman take him down? And if he can, he wins. If Uriah Hall can stay on his feet and tag Weidman, then Hall's going to win. But I like Weidman in this fight. Similar to what I was just saying about Anthony Smith, I think Weidman wants some respect on his name. I think he wants to show he's not just some guy for young guys to beat up on. I think he wants to show that he's still a threat in the division, especially if he can grapple, right? Like we were talking about it with Kelvin Gastelum. Some of these guys who have great wrestling credentials, they get a few knockouts, and then they think, they're a world championship boxer, man. If you have that wrestling advantage and you can take guys down. Because just going in there swinging, hoping to knock guys out doesn't always work. And it's not usually sustainable unless you have those real striking skills. So I like Weidman in that fight, but only if he comes in smart, puts his game plan to work, and gets some takedowns. So next up, we have the first title fight of the night. Valentina Shevchenko versus Jessica Andrade. Jessica Andrade is going back up to flyweight. She's the former strawweight champ who beat Rose Namajunas, who's on the same card. She got the strawweight title by beating Rose Namajunas by slamming her on the head and getting a slam knockout, which is uncommon to say the least. But yeah, she's going up to flyweight, hoping to be one of the few fighters in UFC history who's won a belt at 2 different weight classes. Unfortunately, she's drawn Valentina Shevchenko, one of the best fighters in the UFC, if not the best fighter in the UFC if you're looking at a well-rounded skill set. Valentina Shevchenko's a multiple-time Muay Thai kickboxing world champion, has beaten other world champions in pure Muay Thai like Joanna Jędrzejczyk. So Valentina Shevchenko, by far probably one of the best fighters in the UFC regardless of gender, and probably the most well-rounded. I follow her on Instagram, and she's always training, learning new martial arts, training with experts in certain martial arts, kind of like George St. Pierre did back in the day. A real student of the game, and it shows. Valentina Shevchenko's got everything. She's got kickboxing, boxing, takedowns, submissions, defensive grappling, good takedown defense. She's got it all. So I like Shevchenko in this fight quite a bit. I think she's the biggest favorite on the card. Yeah. Shevchenko's the biggest favorite on the card at minus 425, which I agree with. Valentina Shevchenko is one of these champions who's so dominant and so well-rounded. The only hope for the challenger is really to probably catch her and knock her out early, right? You know, sometimes you have champs who are so dominant, whether it be like Khabib Nurmagomedov or like George St. Pierre or John Jones, or in the promotional material, they really got to gas up the contender, knowing damn well, like, a lot of the times the contender's only chance is to, like, catch them cold and get a knockout or get some kind of Hail Mary sub. Because, I mean, Valentina Shevchenko, if you've seen her tape, she has really no weaknesses. She's a second-degree black belt in Taekwondo, black belt in Judo, master of sport in boxing, master of sport in kickboxing. So, I mean, this is a woman who's a real martial artist in every area. Her mother's a martial artist. Her older sister's in the UFC. So this is a fighter we're looking at with no real weaknesses. I mean, minus 425 is a pretty big favorite in a title fight against another former champion at a lighter weight class. So I like Shevchenko in that fight, and I think that minus 425 is right on point for Shevchenko. She's defended the the flyweight title multiple times, and I mean, she's so good in every area that, like I said, I mean, the only way I can see her losing is if it's like an early knockout or some freak thing happens. So I like Shevchenko in that fight, and I think that 425 odds are pretty damn accurate. And the previous fight, I missed it. The middleweight fight of Uriah Hall and Weidman is a coin flip of 115 for Hall and then minus 105 for Weidman. So that's like literally a coin flip, right? Like I was saying, when it's literally wrestler versus kickboxer, it's going to come down to whose game plan works. So that's why that fight is so damn close. And then next up, we have Weili Zhang, who's 21-1 in MMA, and Rose Namajunas, former strawweight champion, trying to get her belt back. She's 10-4 in MMA. Rose Namajunas shocked the world. She beat Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Speaking of upsets, at the time, Joanna Jędrzejczyk was, I think, number one in the women's pound-for-pounds ranking. She was the strawweight champ. She defended the belt in dominant fashion on numerous occasions, and Rose went in there and knocked her out early, I think in round one, when she had, I think, no professional wins by knockout, and then beat Joanna in the title rematch. So she won the belt and defended it, which means you're the real champion. You can win it and defend it. It's actually interesting. She then lost the belt to Andrash, who's fighting for the flyweight title, and then Andrash, who's former strawweight champ herself, lost to Zhang, who is the current champ, who also beat Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Joanna Jędrzejczyk is probably one of the best women's fighters of all time. At one point, she was number one in the women's pound-for-pound rankings, a real dominant fighter. So both of these women, Zhang and Namajunas, have beaten Joanna, which is saying something, because Joanna Jędrzejczyk is former multiple-time world Muay Thai champ. So both these fighters have beaten her. And I think this is going to be a close fight. There's another one where the odds are pretty damn close. It's minus 200 for Zhang and plus 160 for Rose. Rose is a real fan favorite. Fan favorite. And I'm a big fan of hers. She's got good striking. She's got good grappling. I think a big thing for her is what kind of state of mind she comes in, if she's motivated, if she's feeling good. I know when she lost to Jessica Andrade, Rose was winning the fight pretty dominantly. She had a pretty dominant first round. It looked like she was maybe on pace to finish Andrade. And then got caught in a takedown, slammed on her head, which is a pretty rare thing to happen in MMA. So I think for Rose, it's going to come down to what kind of state of mind she's in and if she's feeling motivated and she's feeling good. I think something that can make a big difference is the weight differential for the two, because Rose is kind of like a stick. She's not a woman who carries a ton of muscle for the weight class. Weili Zhang is the opposite, whereas Rose probably doesn't really cut weight or cuts minimal weight. Zhang looks like, she fights at 115, like we were saying earlier, and then probably rehydrates up to dare I say, 130 or 140, because Zhang is jacked, a real specimen in there. So we'll see. I think the size advantage and the power advantage could be a big difference, because like I said, I don't think Rose really cuts any kind of weight to make straw weight, whereas Zhang is a real tank, really muscular and durable for the weight class. She might be as the champion, like the biggest straw weight in the division in terms of like when she rehydrates. I mean, she's big. So I think Zhang will have the power differential on the feet. I think she'll be a little bit more durable. I've been going back and forth in this fight all day because I think Zhang is going to be able to do significantly more damage on the feet with her punches and kicks and striking than Rose. I think if Rose is going to win, it's going to have to be all skill, getting in and out. She works with Trevor Whitman, who's, a phenomenal striking coach. I think it's going to be one of those things where it's skill versus power, right? I think Rose is a more technical striker, has higher strike IQ, probably better jiu-jitsu and grappling, but Zhang is bigger, probably more durable, can probably hurt Rose a lot more on the feet. I think Zhang, her game plan, if she was smart, would probably be to swing early and often and see if Rose's chin can hold up. So I'm going to go with Rose here, but I think it's going to be coming down to skill. It's going to be, I think Zhang can win easily if she can hurt Rose or kind of bully her with her size and strength. But if Rose can stick and move, get in and out, use her skill, I think she can win. But I think this is going to be the most close title fight. Because like I said, if you look up pictures of Weili Zhang, she's quite big for the weight class. Her last fight against Joanna Jędrzejczyk is similar to Rose, where she doesn't look like they're cutting a ton of weight. They're not jacked specimens, and Zhang is a specimen. Like I said, she's probably the biggest 155 or 115er in the UFC. So I think if Rose is going to win, she's got to play it smart and kind of stick and move, kind of point fight. So I'm going to go Rose by decision. I mean, Zhang is so durable and so big for the weight class. I don't really see Rose knocking her out or finishing her on the feet unless it's like a freak thing. I think it's going to be Rose by decision, just being smart and kind of using her head. Trevor Whitman seems like he's excellent with coming up with game plans, especially for guys like Usman or Justin Gaethje. So we'll see. I like Rose in that fight, but at the same time, I know in the back of my head, Zhang could hurt Rose early and put her away early, because Zhang is going to weigh 20 to 30 pounds more than Rose does on fight night. So we'll see. And then for the last fight of the evening, the real main fight of the evening is going to be Kamaru Usman versus Jorge Masvidal. Kamaru Usman, probably my favorite fighter in the UFC, former D2 All-American. I think he was a multiple-time Division II national champion in wrestling. Now that Khabib's out of the UFC, probably is the best offensive wrestling in the UFC. A guy who has 100% takedown defense, which is unheard of in the UFC. So he's a guy who not only can take you down at will in any number of ways, but a guy who has never been taken down in the UFC. I think Usman should be number one in the pound-for-pound rankings. I think he's the best fighter in the UFC for men's now that Khabib is gone. I know Khabib, who is like the last few years' GOAT best fighter, has said Usman should be number one in the pound-for-pound ranking. And I think he will be against Jorge Masvidal, a guy who's already beaten once by out-wrestling and out-grappling him. The first fight wasn't the most entertaining, like we've talked about before on this channel. It came down to a guy who had significantly better offensive grappling against a guy who doesn't have good defensive grappling, who can be taken down, can be held against the fence and stuff, which he did. So, yeah, I think a similar thing might happen. Masvidal has never been knocked out in the UFC. He's never been finished. Even though he got dominated and controlled on the ground, Usman wasn't able to do a ton of damage to him. It's not like Masvidal's head and face was all fucked up. Like, he really took a lot of damage. And I know Usman has said he's wanting to finish him. Usman's striking is definitely getting better every fight, but Masvidal is going to be the better striker again. He's more dangerous on the feet. He can chop your legs up pretty good with leg kicks. He's dynamic. You can throw a flying knee in there or two. So I think Usman's going to wrestle him again. I think it's going to be another 5-round decision. I think Usman's going to try to make it more entertaining because the first fight, even though I'm like one of this guy's biggest fans, was kind of boring. You know, we talked about this before on the channel. There are fights that are wrestling heavy that are entertaining, and then there's fights where the guy is holding another guy down and doing just enough for it to not get stood up. And then, you kind of find yourself looking at your phone for half a damn fight. But at the same time, it's also the guy in the bottom's fault that they don't have the defensive grappling to get up. So I like Usman in this fight again. I know he says he wants to finish Masvidal. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think he's going to be the guy to crack the code and knock Masvidal out. Masvidal is a guy who you're going to need a ton of damage accumulated, or you need to hit him with a freak thing to knock him out. Similar like we were talking about Gastelum. He's just got an iron chin. So I think it's going to be another grappling-heavy decision by Usman. I think Usman's going to be risk-adverse again. I know he said he wants to finish Jorge, but, man, when you feel those first few leg kicks or a good body kick, you're going to want to grapple, right? It's going to be one of those scenarios where, one guy's a former D2 All-American and then the other guy has good MMA defensive wrestling and grappling, but Usman's going to be able to take him down. He's going to be able to hold him down. It might be boring again. I think Usman will try to mix it up a little bit more. He might try to strike with him a little bit early, might try to inflict a little bit more damage. Usman's not a guy who really gets submissions, so I just don't think the finish is going to happen. I don't think Usman has made necessary jumps in his striking to be the first guy to knock out Masvidal, nor do I think he's going to want to try to go into the fire with him to get a finish. I think he's going to play it safe and wrestle. I think he's going to try to make it more interesting. I'm hoping he tries to inflict more damage, be a little bit more active on the ground or against the fence. People are kind of shitting on Usman because a lot of his strikes were like foot stomps against the fence. But again, it takes two to tango, man. When you're getting held down or you're getting held against the fence and the fight is boring, that's on you too, man, because you're a professional fighter and you should be able to get up or at least try to get up. So I like Usman in this fight to win. I think if he wins this fight now, he has cleared out the division. He's the most active guy at welterweight. In addition to Usman being like textbook definition of a specimen in his build, he has the skill sets. I think Usman's a real dog. I follow him on Instagram, and he's training every day, whether it be MMA, lifting weights. His physique doesn't change. I mean, this is a guy we're talking about who probably doesn't party, doesn't have many distractions. I think he's a real dog, too. I think after this fight, people will have to admit, like, all right, you beat Tyron Woodley, who's one of the best welterweights of all time. You broke Colby Covington's jaw. You knocked out Gilbert Burns. You beat Masvidal by decision. You beat Masvidal again by decision. I think he's finally going to ascend and be like, all right, now that Khabib is gone, this is the best guy in the UFC. And shit, man, it can be boring when a guy's such a good wrestler that some of his fights he's going to hold guys down, but George St. Pierre has done the same thing. John Jones has done the same thing in his prime, where Jones and GSP, who are two of the GOATs, they kind of had a risk-adverse style, man. It's like strike against a grappler and grapple against a striker, right? If you're good in all areas, why aren't you going to use your entire toolbox, right? Why would you try to brawl with a brawler, right, when you can just wrestle him? And yeah, I think after this fight, if Usman wins, he's going to get that number one pound-for-pound ranking, because pound-for-pound, it means you could go up to beat any division and you're really the best all-around fighter, right? And I think Usman is doing the right thing. It's staying at a 170 and clearing out the division, as opposed to doing this double champ shit or what McGregor did and go out of MMA and do boxing. After this fight, if Usman wins, I think he's going to get his due. And people will be like, all right, granted, some of his fights are boring, wrestling heavy, but he's cleared out his division. He's beaten everyone in the top 5. So yeah, those are my picks. Let me just break down this card, and we'll see if my picks are more correct next week. It was a little bit longer episode, but man, when you have 3 title fights, you got to kind of break it down in depth. So I'm going to go Smith over Crute, Weidman over Hall, Shevchenko over Andrash. I'm a little nervous about Rose and Zhang, about my girl Rose maybe getting knocked out because Zhang is built like a fucking truck. And then Usman over Masvidal. And I think if Usman gets this win, man, you're going to have to put some respect on his name because this guy has beaten everyone in the top 5, in some cases multiple times. So yeah, those are my picks. If you like the content, like and subscribe. If you have any advice or if you think anything could be better in particular, let me know in the comments below. Thanks, and I'll catch you next week.